New Day and finale song at the end is just really declaring that after Act 2 is a very low key and very dark, sad run through Jesus' capture and his arrest and subsequent death. So New Day really brings the whole album to a climactic close and shows that going forward there was hope for humanity after this event. So we had to make that real.
New Day is a song, again, I wrote probably in like the year 2000, after the first band and before the No Longer started. And it was a song that I always thought had a maturity level to it. The lyrics were whatever, but we never used it for anything. And it wasn't until this project that I kind of was like, oh yeah, I remember this song. And New Day, it kind of makes sense for the resurrection, you know, being Sunday, a new week, the new beginnings. And Nick and Luke were kind of like, yeah, I guess so. I was like, no, I'll rewrite the words. It'll be good, I promise.
New Day was another song that Geoff had written years and years ago, and it never really turned into anything. You know, it's just like a song he messed around with. And he decided to bring it in there, and we were kind of like skeptical because we're like, we didn't use the song then. Why would we use it now? You know, kind of thing like that. Until we knew what he was going to do with it. He was going to turn it into resurrection. Jesus is alive. And then we decided to work it in to make it a big finale, work in some elements from Wake Up and the whole Paupers and Princes, Strangers and Kinsmen ending.
It was Nick's idea to, I believe, go back to the Paupers and Princes climax.
We were able to tie in the coming of the King a second time and talk about him as not just the King of Jews but the King of Kings. And so we revisit that Paupers and Princes, Strangers and Kinsmen bow before the Royal King to establish that that's what the future will eventually be, is every knee bowing, every tongue confessing. And so we tied that in and declare to the audience or whoever will listen that this is the King of Kings, and that's really the whole point of this whole thing. It's the gospel message in a nutshell.
Rock opera starts very joyfully, you know. It focuses on the ministry of Christ in the first act. The second act, it gets very somber, very dark. Not in an evil way, but in a very okay, like, you hear the sacrifice, you know, and what goes into that. And this kind of turns the corner of the whole thing and brings it back to joy, you know, because this is the King of Kings and he's alive, and one day we're going to be with him forever.
The way that song was able to be reused is really cool. And what I think is so amazing is the little musical interlude that happens right before New Day starts is from our Face West CD, which is actually an abbreviated version of something that I recorded after seeing The Passion of the Christ, which I was just reminded of recently, actually. I didn't even think about this, but I wrote kind of this orchestral piece and recorded it after watching The Passion of the Christ on DVD for the first time. I'd seen it in theaters, but then I kind of went back a year later and watched it just to be reminded of those things. And I was inspired to go down and write this thing in E minor, and that's a common chord on this album, especially in Act 2. Kind of coincidentally, the last two chords are G, and it slides up to a B major. The first chord in New Day is B major, and the last chord of the Entombment is G. And it was quite accidental, but I decided, hey, let's try to use this because it ties the songs together. And to now realize that I actually wrote that and recorded it as inspired by the Passion of the Christ, and now to have it transition from the burial piece into the hope of the resurrection, it's just another one of those things that just comes together and you're like, totally the Lord. It's nothing I thought of. There was no George Lucas grand scheme like people always say about Star Wars and stuff. Like, I did not know when I was writing these things that they would be used and they would all come together in this way. It was totally the Lord. And for that to go into New Day being the same way. That song came together fairly easily, and that's another song where I think is really cool, as I mentioned before with Wake Up, is that a lot of the elements of that song are very similar to Wake Up. Have you not heard the news? Is a line that it's kind of modified from where the messenger comes to Jesus in Wake Up Lazarus, and he says, I've been sent here with the news, if there's something you can do. And again, he says, we thought this man from Nazareth would be king of the Jews. We see the king of the Jews, and then we kind of see Jesus, not yet revealed, discussing with the men on the road to Emmaus, that this is what the prophecies always said. The prophecies that are all the way back at the beginning of the rock opera. All those prophecies pointed ultimately to the Messiah being rejected, put to death. And I find that really exciting. And then another cool part is when Peter says, I keep hearing these rumors, but I've yet to confirm, is another kind of modified line from Paupers and Princes. There's a whispering rumor that soon is confirmed. And that's really interesting to me, just to kind of be able to go back and listen to that. And as far as tying Wake Up together with this song, it's pretty obvious later on in New Day. But, with Don't You Remember the Things That He Said is similar to the bridge where Jesus says, do you remember the things that I said? Luke found a way to transition the two parts together to go from 4/4 to, whatever it is, 3/4 or 4/6/8, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Shows how much I know about music, but he just found a great way to transition those songs and to go back to that Paupers and Princes and have those, extreme vocals at the very end to climax the whole thing. And it was Nick's idea to have this is the King of Kings at the end. And I'm just really proud of how collaborative this whole thing was, and to have been a part of it. And I hope that when people hear that, and hopefully when they see these videos, that they'll see the amount of thought and care and prayer that went into this project, that they'll see some of those things that just can't be written off as a coincidence. They were ordained. I believe that God is sovereign, and He had these things in mind, whether we thought so or not. They came together, and we're really pleased with the outcome. We hope that you are as well. And it's INRI by the no longer, and we'll have it forever. So we're thankful for that. And go out and get your copy. This is the King!